Hi, it's Rob Word again. Glad you're here. I'm glad I'm here too, and I'm glad you're out there watching this show because we're going to talk about Westerns. That's what I love to talk about, and our guest has been in one of my favorite all-time Westerns by one of my favorite all-time directors. I know that could be 20 or 30 films, but it's The Long Riders, Walter Hill's movie, and I've got one of the bad guys in it. Nicholas Guest is joining us today. Nick.
Yes.
What was that like being with all those other brothers? Was there a lot of camaraderie or like one-upmanship?
There was a lot of humor. It was fantastic. Everyone really, I know everyone says that, but we really did get along. And there was music and trips down the Chattooga River, I think it was, raft trips. I mean, it felt like being at, summer camp or something.
That's
and
great.
Of course, Walter, I mean, the atmosphere was just, beautiful atmosphere for us to work in. Yeah, so.
Well, it's such an unusual premise, and lucky for the audience and the filmmakers is that you guys all came together to do that.
Quite something. Apparently it took something like 10 years to finally get it together.
They were 4 families of brothers. They rode together from Missouri to Minnesota and from Texas to Tennessee. They were the most famous outlaw heroes of the West. They were known as the Long Riders. This is their story, and it's as close to the truth as legends can ever be.
The way I hear it, James and Stacy made a film where they were brothers. They were the Wright brothers.
Right. That's
like 10 or 12 years before that. It was a PBS movie.
Yeah, it was a beautiful film, actually.
And they said, well, let's do something like this again. And so they looked around and found the Outlaws, the Cole Younger and those guys, and Frank and Jesse James and Bob Ford and what was the other?
Charley Ford.
Charlie, Bob and Charlie. And you were Charlie or Bob?
I was Bob.
Who pulled the trigger?
I pulled the trigger.
Oh my God!
Yeah, I've been in therapy ever since.
The Carradines' dad played that character in the Jesse James version with Tyrone Power.
Incredible.
And he got over it.
He did, yeah. No, it was just an unbelievable experience. It really was from the get-go.
The atmosphere, it was like the studio wasn't there. You shot it in Georgia.
Largely, I mean, I was essentially in Georgia. They did some in Northern California. Actually, we were in, there was a part of Texas we were in briefly. That was the very green part. But it was, it's just, it was a magical experience. It really was.
How did you guys get the part?
Okay, so there were various brothers who said no, because it has to do with size of roles, I imagine,
and also, who wants to be known as the guy who killed Jesse James?
Perhaps
obviously you did.
I was happy with that. No, my brother and I, ultimately, we went over to Warner Brothers. Well, we talked to Walter, and then we came back to Reed, but Walter is immediately, you feel comfortable, and such a good writer, which is also a huge ingredient.
The Getaway.
The Getaway, yeah.
Hard Times.
There you go.
And even one he wrote for Bill Cosby and Robert Culp. They were doing the I Spy series together, and Walter wrote one called Hickey and Boggs that Bob Culp said, you can direct this.
How amazing.
And they didn't let him at the last minute. They said, this script is too good, we're going to do it. And I think Culp ended up directing it.
Really?
That pissed me off.
Yeah.
But
we ultimately came into Reed, and I was beyond nervous, And you know what? It was one of those situations where it actually helped, because it's the scene when we first come over and try to join the gang and we're rejected.
Yeah.
So that nervousness is terrific. And it's perfect.
And
they said, welcome aboard right there, which doesn't happen anymore, or I'm sure not very often anymore.
Not like this, not with a group like this.
No, it was true.
Christopher and Nicholas Guest as the Ford brothers.
What was Walter like as a director?
I mean, the thing is, and I've heard him say this, he picks you, and then, he's picked you because he knows you can do it. So it wasn't like we were being managed, like this is how you're going to behave or any of that, He set the scene perfectly. And back to that scene again, when my brother and I still come up to the Carradine, all of them are standing there, and the music is playing. You're in that world right away. And so it just happens organically, the work and there's permission to have kind of pauses as well that are important. You know, this is, somebody's going to get killed, but I think the comedy is actually critical, you know, those critical moments, you know.
And the comedy sometimes is so unexpected.
Exactly,
too, which
yeah.
works.
I want your sons, Mr. Samuel.
What do you want them for?
For robbing banks and trains, ma'am.
What do you think your chances are of bringing them in?
It's an amazingly stupid question.
Absolutely. But again, we were in Georgia, so it was like, oh my God, it felt like we were in 1870 or whatever, yeah.
What time of year did you shoot?
I think we started in August. It rained a lot, but there was a beauty, you know, and the kind of gray in the sky, and it was so green, you know, it's extremely beautiful.
Wasn't it hot and humid in August?
It didn't bother me. I was so happy the whole time. I just could have cared less, you know.
Yeah.
I grew up in New York, so rain is not a big deal, you know, but tremendous, yeah.
It's really stood the test of time, I think, and I believe it gets better as the years go by, because with the people who are trying to make Westerns, except for Costner, who does wonderful work.
Beautiful work, yeah.
Most of them, they want to make Westerns, and they just don't know how.
Well, I think you're right. I really do. And, you know, Walter he had that. He had it. He really understood what he was doing, and he knew the time, and Warriors also.
Oh,
I mean, it's not a Western, but
but he says it's a Western.
He said it's a Western-ish or whatever.
Yeah.
But
I love that
the
movie
tension.
a lot.
The crew, of course, was incredible.
And great stunt guys and
Stunt
horsemen
guys
and stuff. I know you didn't have any of those scenes like
No,
that,
I didn't, but yeah.
it's filled with that. And Walter's known for how well he stages the
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, sometimes he would make a little joke before a scene with me, too. I don't remember exactly what they were, but it just so relaxed and able to, you know, come up with stuff spontaneously. Yeah.
action. And that was a time, really, in 1980, and they weren't making that many Westerns.
They were not,
And
yeah.
so it had that great marketing coup to have all you brothers
Big time.
together.
David, Keith, and Robert Carradine as Cole, Jim, and Bob Younger.
Yeah. Had you worked with your brother before?
No, that was the only time. Yeah. So and there was, you know, I mean, we have our own, you know, chemistry, you know, so that's just built in. I mean, I remember when we were first in a scene and we were both on horseback, you know, and he turned to me and said, "What are you doing?" You know what I mean? Like an older brother would do. I was like, I don't know. You know, so any discomfort is useful. You know what I mean? It's very funny.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you're in that, and
me
thanks
too.
for sharing those stories. You
Sure.
did a Western in Spain,
I
sort of
did.
a Western. It's
Sort of a
Zorro.
Zorro. I actually, it was one of these silly things where I thought, I read for Zorro, you know, but when I got there, the lovely actor who was playing Zorro said, "No, Nick, you were never going to be playing Zorro." So I played a French magician, and it was I lived in France for a couple of, but anyway, there was an old-time stunt coordinator who was beyond that. He had trained people like Olivier to sword fight, and I was so excited at the notion that I'd be working with this guy, because I had these, you know, scenes, obviously, and he went through it, and I said, "I think I really have the hang of this. I think I'm a swordsman." He said, he was British. He said, "No, Nick, you don't know what you're doing. And basically, you're going to see my wrist in the shot, not yours, Nick." And we just hugged. We were laughing hysterically. And that's the other thing, you know, like, and the camera people, the crew was incredible. The crews in Europe are amazing. There was a lot of smoking. I don't know if there is as we speak, but they're like, let me see, Nicolas, this close. You know, a lot of the smoke is coming in your face. But no, they know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, it was a half-hour color
It was a
series
half-hour
that
thing.
I think ran for 4 years.
Yes.
And I was so excited when it came on, because I, of course, loved the Disney version.
Oh,
and,
me too.
And also, I loved the Tyrone Power.
Fantastic.
And even the one that George Hamilton did, where he plays
yeah.
Bunny Wigglesworth in
Right.
Pink. And it's his other
fun.
character. It's just so much fun. And such a great story about the masked hero. He's
is.
one of the first superheroes, really.
Superhero.
Well, because in the Zorro, you're playing a French magician.
I was,
And tell me a little bit more about that. I know the crews were great, and how was Duncan Ruggera?
Oh, he was so nice. He's the very nice actor who informed me very gently, saying, "No, Nick, you would not be playing Zorro."
Yes.
And he and I had a great time. He really is a very, very, classy guy. A very good painter, by the way.
Yeah, he lives on Vancouver Island, I believe.
That's right.
Yeah.
But anyway, so he was embracing, and the crew was incredible. And this guy with the teaching me how to fence, it was so real. You felt like this was really happening, And they take long lunches too. Very good food.
Oh yeah, I shot a series in the south of France called
great.
Crossbow.
Yes.
Guillaume Tell.
Beautiful.
And by Lyon, and it was just such a lovely, lovely place. And they had long lunches too.
There you go.
But it didn't slow anything down. They had wine at lunch because it's just like having lemonade there. But
it turns out Mike Nichols went to the same school I went to in New York at one point, and they said, "How was it?" And he said, "Good lunch." So I share this with him. If there's food involved, I'm involved.
Well, then the food, I think, was better in the south of France than it is in Paris.
Absolutely.
Because you get the Italian influx coming in.
Very true. That's
really
true.
good. Really good.
I did have this, my wife was with me too, and we had this lunch with Ephraim Zimbalist Jr.
Who played Don Alejandro.
He did, and he was such a lovely man. It was great. I felt like, yes, this is him sitting here with history. That's the other thing. I've always appreciated that, the people that I've been able to work with,
Well, he's done some great films too.
He has, yeah.
His father, a big violinist. He'd grown up in the business too.
Absolutely,
in the circle.
That's right.
Big Warner Brothers star with the FBI
Tremendous.
story.
Yeah, I love that series, actually.
Well, I
saw a rerun of it the other day.
Well, I saw a clip of it in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, where Tarantino took pieces of that and worked it into a bit with Leonardo's character, and it's such a funny bit. But
speaking of Tarantino, talk about it made my day. My wife and I were at the British Academy, some party or whatever. I'm a member there. And we just came over to Tarantino, and I said, "Hi, I'm Nick Guest." And he said, "I know you, and I know every movie you've been in." He started to, he talk about knowledge of some obscure things I'd done. Yeah.
And he would quote the dialogue.
He would
too.
quote the dialogue.
I know. He's crazy.
Wonderful.
But he's a genius. He really is. That's
he is.
a word I don't throw around too
No,
often.
nor do I.
He certainly is.
Truly, yeah.
And I love his movies.
Me too.
They're fun.
They're inventive.
They really are. His dialogue, but what he does too is just before every shot, he goes, "Why are we here?" to the crew. They go, "Because we love movies."
That's it.
And he does.
He does.
And it shows.
See, that's the thing. You want somebody like, obviously, Walter Hill loves movies, and, I've worked with others that it's the same. It's contagious,
Yeah.
So,
Well, and now you've got bankers and businessmen running the studios, and it's just not conducive to creativity or fun.
That's right.
It's like, I don't know, I'm going to get fired.
That's right. Yeah.
So
true.
Let's talk about how you grew up in New York.
Right.
Your father is a lord or a baron?
Well,
or
he
something?
became, his dad actually was in Parliament, so ultimately he got the title, and actually he was the last person to be able to speak in Parliament, and I saw him. I'd done a film, I can't remember where we were, but I arrived in London, and my mother said, "Get over to the House of Lords, your father is about to speak." So, but then Tony Blair, got rid of the inheriting of that title. You have the title, but you're not going to be allowed to speak in Parliament.
So what are you?
I'm the honorable at the moment, and waiting for something to happen. It's like, it would be like a good movie. Right? So those are so many movies like that, right? Or not just movies, but anyway, no. So that it's and it doesn't mean anything. It has nothing to do with money or whatever. But I did get to meet my grandfather, which was very cool. He was brilliant. You know, he was a doctor.
So did you spend much time over there?
Every other year, because my dad was at the UN, and it was like a college professor salary, but the perks were unbelievable. So they paid for us to go every other year to England, and then we just like would jump on trains and go everywhere.
How great.
And when we were in these places, I pretended I was from there, kind of the acting thing. So as soon as we arrived in London, I said, sorry, I couldn't hear you. What's going on here? You know, so that was really
So you
fun.
had a great facility already you knew about.
Our dad did, you know, it's like, and he
For
always,
voices.
for voices, and he would like collapse in front of us joking, I'm sorry, you know, whatever. It was just, yeah, it was entertaining. It was.
Well, you mentioned that you spoke French. So
Well, I lived in France for but in those early days, like I was just like not afraid to talk to. There were kids from all over the world, so I was like playing ping pong with people from everywhere. You know, the kids. So that was, so therefore I wasn't afraid of languages. So when I lived in Geneva, Switzerland for 1 year when my dad was there, and then in Paris for 2 years, and it's just bliss. A friend of mine, an Italian friend, took me to. Italy at one point. He drove me somewhere and he said, get out. I'll be back in a few days. I wasn't unhappy. It was Florence, right? And I went into a little cafe and this old man started speaking to me and I was going, sì, sì. And he finally said, parli italiano. I said, no. He said, non è molto importante. And he kept going, you know, so I wasn't afraid. So therefore I had this great afternoon with this guy talking to me and I didn't know what he was saying. Perfect. Good training.
So we first met on Rupert Hitzig's movie.
Yes, who I worked with, you know.
The Legend of O.B. Taggart,
Yeah.
which an awful script by Mickey Rooney.
Mickey Rooney was amazing to work with, though, as was, well, you know, Rupert I love.
Yeah,
you know,
me
so
too.
That was comfortable. I mean, and my hero, or one of my heroes, Ben Johnson, was on it.
What a cast that was. You had Ben, Ernie Borgnine, Randy Travis, who turned out to be a pretty good actor.
He was, yeah.
And Gloria DeHaven was in
Oh,
that
man,
too.
yeah, yeah.
Billy Barty.
Yeah.
Billy Barty. He and Mickey Rooney had done Mickey Maguire shorts together in 1930 as
So I have
playing kids.
Tiny little anecdotes regarding Ernest Borgnine, who I was in awe of, you know. So wherever we were staying, we got picked up first only because of where we were. And then he got into this van and I couldn't speak. I mean, I've met people all these years. I could not speak. And so he didn't know who I was, which was so great. And we got to the set somewhere in New Mexico, and he suddenly saw me in costume, and he yelled out, hey, you, in the van. I didn't know you were in the picture. It was like, I felt like I was suddenly in a movie with Ernest Borgnine. And the Ben Johnson one was really thrilling. I mean, I was just hanging around him and he was like doing some roping just to... But also there's a scene in which I'm like trying to fight him, which was kind of pathetic. He was just like holding me back.
Well, you played kind of a challenged young kid.
I did. But he was saying, hold on, young man, just stay right there. I'll do this, you know. But we were at breakfast one morning and I just was speechless. And the AD came over and said, you know, Nick, we need you. And he turned to the AD and said, a man's got to finish his breakfast. I thought, like, now I'm in a John Ford movie. Who's been, you know what I mean? These are the result of these experiences.
He just liked being on set. I know his guy, I forget the guy's name who he was with, but Rupert gave him some small parts in the film too, and Ben was done. He was like ready to go. This guy had 2 more days of being background player.
There you go. Oh,
and Ben just hung around with people and telling stories, having a good time.
Stories. Mike, yeah, he just, I felt so lucky to be in that, you know. And Rupert's wonderful, so it was like a...
Mickey Rooney, I mean, he was really giving Rupert a hard time, though, in terms of...
Yeah, but he was just, it was fascinating, obviously, because who didn't grow up with him, right, all of his movies. And at one point he would say, you know, if you move 1 inch and if you do this and you do that, and I was just like, oh yeah, he started at age 3 or whatever
and he could do everything.
He could,
too.
You know. And when, you know, the classic thing, when they said, you know, action... He was present, you know. Whatever was happening, he was present. He was
well, the story for this, for you guys that don't know, it's like Bonanza that's flipped upside down. Pa, Mickey Rooney, has been in prison for 20 years, and he comes out for his three sons, one of them isn't quite right, and it pushes the story along further. And the one who's not quite right
I'm not quite right.
is right here.
And I still am not to this day. So regarding not quite right, to further that notion, I went up to Randy Travis's trailer one day, and I had my guitar with me. I knocked on the door. I said, "Can I play a little something for you?" He said, "Sure, Nick. Go ahead." And I did. And he said, "Here, Nick." He handed me one of his his picks that said Randy. So that was my little reward. But it was very funny. It's like I'm in a dream world thinking, we need Nick in the band, when I perform next. But anyway, he was very kind.
Oh, that was a happy set.
It was a happy
except for
set.
Rupert was so frustrated with the script. He kept trying to make it better.
He did.
It shot the whole movie for like $15,000.
But I don't regret a thing. Those are yet.
It
to
was
work with
fun.
somebody I've known my whole life.
Great cast that he had too.
Absolutely.
And making a Western in Santa Fe.
In Santa Fe.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. Yeah, I know it's not a Western, but it's a funny movie.
It is.
Trading Places is what I'm talking about. Now that's a funny movie. John Landis was on a roll.
Yeah.
The Blues Brothers and Animal House, and then Trading Places. It may be his best film in terms of overall control and the laughs and the consistency and the way it goes.
Brilliant script. Brilliant script. And yes, and the location. Okay, so for my stuff, it was essentially at the Armory Building, which is up on Park Avenue. And so the story, actually, it's a fun story, is that, so I was, with the other three guys, the friends of Aykroyd, and we couldn't be more uptight and more obnoxious, which is fun. It's fun to play those people. But the four of us, I believe, were in a bathroom way down below in this building, so the acoustics are good if you want to sing like Temptation stuff or anything else for that matter. So we started singing, I don't remember what song. Landis walked in and said, "This is very funny. You guys write a song tonight and we'll film it tomorrow." That does not happen. No. So Robert Curtis Brown and myself found ourselves, I don't remember where we were. We put together this song and we filmed it the next day, and we both had to join ASCAP. And it's a cute scene, So that was a great thing that came out of that.
Boy,
and it was the spontaneity.
He understands comedy, though.
He does.
And he just really did some wonderful stuff. It is timing.
It's timing.
And slapstick. He has slapstick in his movies.
Does.
But for those of you who don't know this film, I really didn't mention the cast, but it's Eddie Murphy and Danny Aykroyd and Don Amici and Ralph Bellamy trying to scam with this switch, where they take this bum shyster, Eddie Murphy, and put him in as the top wealthy guy and heir to fortune, and take Danny Aykroyd and wipe out all of his credit cards and everything that. And then he's on the bum in the street, and your sister-in-law.
That's right.
The hot Jamie Lee Curtis is in this.
She's in it. She was, she got involved with the Aykroyd character, did she not?
Oh, really?
No. It was so great. It was like there were so many plots going on at the same time. And he's a brilliant filmmaker. He is. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's my dad's favorite film of the comedies was Trading Places.
And it holds up. It really, really does.
It does. A lot of his films do.
They do.
I think.
They do. Truly.
Let's talk about your voice work, because you've done hundreds of cartoons and video games, and it's just the Luke Group. I know about them, and they're available, and they're good, and they go in. Tell us what that process is. What do they do?
I got a phone call and I said, "Nick, you do some Russian, right?" Because I played a Russian in a movie with Alan Arkin, one of my heroes, And I said, "Yeah." He said, "It's just one line, and there'll be this actor there who does speak it fluently." And I got to this looping stage, and it was the movie The Nude Bomb with Adams. And I just had to say this one thing, and they said, "Okay, Nick, here's your contract." And I thought, what is going on here? Is this possible? And then it was really like it changed my life forever. And then they said, "Oh, he does some Russian, he does French, he does, and British too. I play a lot of British."
That's not fair. That's easy for you.
Yeah, that's not fair. That's exactly. That's cruel. So then, and it just grew and grew, and there was a woman, there were many people like Andrea Romano, who cast things like, so many things, Sue Blue. It was an early period in which you could take their class or you'd meet them and they go, you should be with this agent and actually you should be on the next series. So whether it was Justice League or Animaniacs, it was just an incredible time. So I feel very lucky that I got into it when I did.
Animaniacs, now that's a classic show that is just funny and hip, and adults watch it too. Who were some of the voices in that?
Well, Frank Welker was there that first episode I did, and I was playing French Spider or something like that. And he was asked to do the voice of a dog or something, and he said, "What kind of bark?" So actually what happened really early on is, this is serious. I'm going to really work hard at this. And so it's not easy necessarily, at all. And you can keep, getting better and better at it. Anyway, I
So with Frank Welker and the dog, what was that bark?
So he was asked to do a bark for a dog. And he said, well, what kind of dog? He said, well, I think Lassie. He goes, oh, okay, I know that bark. That's how extraordinary he was. He was in it to really perfect it, And so, and then I met, the thing is, like, once you're in 1, 2, 3, then, it just grows from there.
Who were some of the other people in that group?
Well, one of the first groups was unbelievable. So for people like, it was the very first looping group, actually, and it's the woman, Allison Kane, who called me, who was married to the writer of a certain movie, Jaws.
Oh.
Carl Gottlieb.
Yes.
Yeah. So that was the first movie in which...
Do a shark. Do a shark nose.
I'm scared of sharks, so I'm not going to do it. No. What happened is, because prior to that, a lot of editors would do voices or what have you. They said, let's get some improv people involved in this looping business. And I was not there for that first one. But anyway, so Allison, after that, doing The Nude Bomb, called me repeatedly. And people like Robin Williams would pop in, John Candy, and it was the old days, let's face it. And, the director would say, you know what, we should actually do some improv exercises before we start the session today or whatever. It was incredible. Going to lunch, Landis did a lot of those, So it was like being in the theater, an improv group. They were either from Second City or the Committee up north, so.
Phil Proctor.
He and I did a million things together. And we actually got to work once on camera too, and we just had the best time. That's the thing, it's like when you've had the voice stuff together, there's a freedom, and,
And you have the script right in front of you too. You don't have to memorize lines.
No, you don't, which is fun. But actually there's a lot of improv too, which is, I love that, so you have to be open to that, so absolutely.
Well, it's a thrill to talk to you and to hear these stories, Nick.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
It's 1992 or 3 when we made that movie in New Mexico. So
that's right,
You've been busier than me.
As much as possible, right? I do love it, I have to say. I've never gotten I'm grateful for each and every job, because you never know.
You don't, but boy, it's great to have the variety of talent and expertise that you bring to the roles.
Thank you so much.
So
keep it fun. I've been told to just...
And I hope everybody out there has had fun today, too, because we have.
We have. That's the beauty of it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rob.